you that don't know me, I'm Christina Morgan. I'm here, a partner at BF. Been here for 8 years, November 1st. I cannot believe how time flies, or it doesn't, I guess, in the pandemic. Um, so I will be presenting today. Rob will not be joining us. I'll apologize now if you really like Rob. I hope you also like Leonardo DiCaprio, because all the pictures are of Leonardo and his different movies. So if you're a Leonardo DiCaprio fan, I think you'll like this PowerPoint. If you're not, then you might be a little disappointed in today's pictures, but hopefully the substance will be something that you enjoy. I've been taking a little bit different approach this year with my seminars. I like to start out with a hypothetical, a bad law school exam question, and issue spot. And the reason being is that in the practical world, for those of you board members and managers on this call today, you need to be able to spot flags, particularly when they have to do with finances or someone stealing from the association. Can we get everyone who has the ability to get in the chat? Can I show a show of, or I should say, everyone who has their computer? Can you tell me, show of hands for all of you that are board members, that are directors on this? I see Kevin. How many board? I see Janet. I'm calling you out. It's a good thing though. How many board? I know I have more than two. The rest of you are seasoned managers, not seasoned board members. So I see a raised hand from Suzanne, another board member.
Mark says he is a board member.
From Claire. Novella, Paula. There's, oh no, Suzanne's a manager. Suzanne's a manager. So, okay. So, how many people do we have on the call right now, Terry? I see Cole. He's one of our attorneys here. Those of you don't know Cole. Cole joined us not very long ago from Kansas City. He's our newest attorney in the Arizona office. We had a couple of other attorneys join us in the Denver office. One of them practices out of New Mexico. Our firm covers Western Seaboard for physical offices in Oregon, Colorado, Utah, and of course, Arizona. But we are practicing in Washington, some in California, heavy in New Mexico, and I'm hoping and wanting to expand to Kansas. And so we'll see if I get my way there or not. There apparently is business there. So anyway, oh, so somebody's both a board president and a community manager, dual time here. Okay, so you're here today to learn about theft and embezzlement with HOAs. Many of you have been to our seminars before, and again, I'm trying to change it up and issue spot. So I'm going to start with a hypothetical, and I'm going to read it out loud for those of you that are audio only. Let me see here. Of course, here we go. For those of you able to read the hypothetical, please put in the chat all the issues that you spot or the things that raise red flags to you. After a few years of working as a community manager, Frank takes a few of the properties from his portfolio and starts his own small company management company. Sorry, there's the president for Newcastle HOA. Jack recently received a call from the association's landscaper, Arnie, who says the landscapers have not been paid in 3 months. Jack saw the financial reports on the Excel spreadsheets at the last few meetings and does not quite understand them. When Jack asks Frank about the landscaper, Frank says there is not any money in the bank because so many projects have been deferred and these projects cost more money than the association can afford. Frank is also trying to keep up with the relentless record requests from a homeowner named Howard. A large number of owners like Howard are delinquent in paying assessments. Frank becomes defensive in his conversation with Jack because after all, he's been saving Newcastle money by doing the projects himself or using his brother Tobias as a handyman rather than paying other vendors. Frank later promises to let Jack see the bank statements in a few weeks once he returns from his bachelor party and wedding in Las Vegas. The president sees posts of Frank on Facebook having a pricey glass of 21-year-old whiskey at the High Rollers Club with his new bride, Rose. Jack is mad when he sees a picture of Frank boarding a jet with a caption saying, "Next stop is our honeymoon in Argentina." He has no clue when Frank will really be back. Another board member, Billy, convinces Jack to contact the police. The detective, Brandon, tells Jack that a number of issues make him suspect that Frank is stealing from the association. All right, in the chat, can we please put issues that you see in this hypothetical that would raise your eyebrows? Where's the board treasurer? Yeah, I don't know. Where is the board treasurer? No return date. Janet gets bonus points for the fact that we don't know where our manager Frank is, when he's ever going to come back, if he ever comes back. Does anybody know whether Argentina even has extradition? Does the board see financials on a monthly basis? Well, under hypothetical, it says Jack saw the financial reports on the Excel spreadsheets at the last few meetings. The Excel spreadsheet should be a clue to you all. And for those of you that are professionally managed, I'm sure that you do not use Excel spreadsheets for your software and providing financial reports to associations. These are good ones. Don't be shy. We have 40 minutes of fun. And then we'll get into other things besides a hypothetical. Does the president have access to the bank account? Novella, that's a great question. No one really knows, right? It says Frank later promises to let Jack see the bank statement. So I think that's probably an inference there that the president or the other directors do not have access to at least see the statements on their own. Mark says, who receives the monthly due payments and how are these accounted for? I guess in that Excel spreadsheet that Frank gives to the board members. Chat's kind of got a delay in it. A large number of delinquent owners. Amanda pointed this out. Absolutely. Where are all these people's payments for their assessments going? Why is there such a large number of delinquent owners? So we'll break this down a little bit for the issue spotting, as we'll go on when you guys are bored of this hypothetical. Oh, look, the manager doing the work himself. Yes, or hiring a brother. Oftentimes, managers who end up embezzling, they will cut checks to their friends or their partners or someone else they know and either pay them more for the work or the work's never done. Also a conflict of interest there with family doing these projects. We don't know. The hypothetical doesn't say whether or not the board's even aware that he's hired his brother. As you'll see in one case that we talk about, one of the managers was hiring his husband, and the board had never met the husband before. Novella says no accountability, doesn't have anyone permission to hire vendors. Well, you know, that's possible here. I think one of the problems that you see out the gate, right, that you see that vendors haven't been paid in months. I mentioned the Excel spreadsheet, so kind of an amateur hour for the way the financial reports are given. They're confusing, not easy to understand. There's always excuses when the manager is confronted about why there isn't money in the bank. We seem broke. Obviously, some other homeowners are on to the manager, but maybe they're dismissed. And this has happened before. I I've had a squeaky wheel homeowner asking for tons of records, wanting to see audit the association, but no one believed her that any money was being stolen because she hadn't been paying assessments. Lo and behold, the manager was stealing money. And it had nothing to do with her not paying her assessments. Those are separate and apart. The hiring the handyman was already mentioned by one of you in the chat. Not having permission. Going to Las Vegas or also big life changes are somewhat of a red flag. If you see, and I'm not saying just because somebody has a wedding that they're stealing. It could be possible there's a gambling addiction or some other motivation for stealing. And then buying 21-year-old whiskey, for those of you who are not whiskey drinkers, that can be much as a couple $100 a glass, as little as you should say. It could be more than that. And then this fact that there's no end in sight where he will return, is going to a place where there probably isn't extradition. So we've done with this. All right, let's get into the fat of it. So now you saw this wonky a hypothetical, and all of these facts, even though I've made up the names actually are based on characters of Leonardo DiCaprio, characters that he's played in movies. We're going to talk about some examples and really what you should be looking for as far as catching embezzlement and how to prevent it. We don't want to be reactive, right? We want to be proactive, and that's why you're here today. So here's our discussion outline. I gave you the hypothetical, and we're gonna talk about this fraud triangle, limiting the opportunity for theft and embezzlement, and fidelity insurance. What you should have to cover in the event, God forbid, that someone steals from the association. So I gave you the issue spotting. I gave you the warning signs of theft, the confusing late financial reports, the large number of owners delinquent. Someone mentioned that in the chat. Deferred maintenance, things that should be getting done that aren't, and then the lifestyle of your manager. One of the managers who came through our office that ended up stealing from several associations had bought a new car, had been going on trips to Las Vegas and other places, to Mexico, really nice trips. He put all this stuff on Facebook, including his wedding. He's bragging about spending more than $20,000 in flowers at his wedding. And it was all over Facebook, this like gorgeous wedding that he had, and he got busted for it. The cops really found that kind of hilarious in some ways, because it was just so blatant. So there's issue spotting, non-compete clauses. For those of you that are managers or have management companies, a lot of management companies have non-compete clauses. So I see a hand up here. Sorry about that. I'll come back to you, Novella. A lot of associations will have a manager that ends up having a non-compete, so they cannot go to a new management company and bring their old association, the associations that they work with, to their new management company. A lot of this will stop managers from just starting their own management company. I think I saw a hand up. Novella, do you have anything to say?
No, sorry, I was moving out of the screen so I could see the full screen. And
oh, okay,
sorry.
No problem. Anybody has a question, please put your hand up. Hopefully I can see you. I'm looking at everyone's screen here, or put it in the chat. I'm looking at the chat too.
To the chat too.
Okay, great. So we have several people monitoring it here. So the fraud triangle, opportunity. So control of the money, rationalization. I work hard, so I deserve X, Y, and Z. I deserve this money. And pressure incentive. A lot of the people who steal from the associations are not just managers. Some are board members, have personal problems, are facing some type of criminal charges. On another front, family problems, addiction, alcoholism, failing business, gambling. We've seen the gamut. And a lot of it is just pure greed, at which some of the associations or some of the managers and directors who have stolen, I'm not sure that stealing $10,000 or $20,000 is worth losing your career for, or if any money is, depending on the person. I figure if you were going to do it, you would go big or go home. Some of the larger ends that we've seen are a couple $1 million stolen from associations as from their management company over several different associations. Managers who have access to a big portfolio, 6, 7 properties, maybe more. We've seen $500,000. It seems like a couple 100,000. And then, you often see 10, 5,000, some, smaller amounts. Those are still pretty big depending on the association and their budget. What's unfortunate is that the police really aren't super interested in getting involved unless it's something usually in the 6 figures or at least over a few, $20,000, $30,000. They're not really super interested in prosecution and pursuing it. It takes a lot of money for these cases. There's oftentimes the records are bad, or there are no records at all. But there's usually a paper trail. There's obviously a paper trail with bank statements. Okay. So I alluded to some of these. I know that managers on this call are very familiar with the Eagle Property Management. $1.3 million. It was a total family affair. You can see the credit cards and personal expenses. I think they had a $50,000 Amex bill that came up from Eagle Property. And I'm going to avoid using names because for our purposes, I don't know it matters to call out them by name. They falsified documents and had federal charges. Eagle Property had federal charges, money laundering, conspiracy. They bought everything with the association money, personal insurance, personal expenses. And I believe that case also had an extradition problem where I think the wife ran off to South America too. Method real estate, some of you might have been familiar with this. I was unfortunately intimately familiar with this. This manager started her own company by taking properties that she had been managing in her previous employer, and she and her daughter was working for her, and her daughter, I don't know that was ever implicated, so no defamation there, okay? I'm not implicating the daughter, but the daughter was working with her, and the financial reports that this manager provided to the boards they were an Excel spreadsheet. They were confusing. No one understood them. She was kiting, and kiting, what that means is that from association to association, she actually moved money over from one association to another. So it would look like an association had money, and then when they weren't looking anymore, their heads were turned the other way and not looking at bank statements, she would transfer the funds over to another association. That accounting was so horrible for the police, and it took a long time and a lot of money for a forensic audit to be. Luckily, the police subsidized the forensic audit and was able to do a lot of that in-house. The way she was discovered is that there was a credit card for the association, and there were a bunch of debits, or there was a debit card for the association and I think a credit card, but there were debits from the account in Las Vegas. This manager had a gambling problem and some personal problems. What was interesting about the case is after it was discovered that she had taken the money and the police had opened up their investigation, she dropped off of the face of the earth, didn't show up at any annual meetings or anything, didn't deny anything. She started her own GoFundMe for her. I'm not even sure it was for her legal bills. She started a GoFundMe. The records were so bad in that case that there was some evidence to say that some of the associations, at least one of the associations, got more money than they had in their bank because she had sloppily moved money from one association to the other. She believes she pled out and served about 3 years. It looks like for anything over a couple $250,000, you're seeing white collar crime. We're seeing about 3 years of jail time. She was released during the pandemic. And so was the couple, the Glendale couple in the next one. This manager had a portfolio. He was writing checks to his husband for work that was never done. It was like tree maintenance and other things. This is the one that had the big wedding on Facebook, who spent over $20,000 in flowers, and it was really blatant. Had a brand new Jeep, brand new car, and was taking trips and had made no bones about it on social media. It was there for everyone to see. Unfortunately, I'll tell you this, the manager at Method Real Estate and this Glendale couple, I had taken out to industry events. I had taken them to lunch. You know, I don't see things, our office and lawyers often don't see things until they come to our office, and our source for getting information is our manager. So I'd never seen financial records and knew that anything was wrong. So, you know, the board really has got to be the stopgap there. Let's see if I have anything to add there. This last one, Kanoa Sika Estates, this was actually a board member that embezzled money. He stole $180,000 over 5 years. The new board president realized the bank account balance didn't make sense. And the association didn't know about all these checks that were bouncing and these projects that were delayed. This board member had a failed business, and he was using the money for that. And he had 2 sets of books, the ones with the right accounting and the ones with the wonky accounting that he tried to show the board and cover things up. I purposely left out their mugshots, but we've put them in prior slides. They're somewhat entertaining. I do know that management companies certainly don't, this is not good press for them. You won't see it's somewhat hard to find some information on the embezzlements if they were associated with a certain management company. Okay, so I gave you some real world examples. I gave you a hypothetical. Let's talk about how do we stop this from happening? Okay, Christina, you told me how it could go wrong, but that's not going to happen to us. I hope not, because you're here today and you're paying attention. So I hope everybody knows what iconic movie, Leo movie this is here. So you got to eliminate opportunity, segregate duties. Those of you that have professional management and those managers in the industry know that you normally have an accounting department or a title department. That's separate and apart departments from your managers. And the managers themselves are not handling the money, or not cutting the checks. Duties are segregated. Also, rotate responsibility of who is supposed to view or help. I know that some associations, you'll have 2 different directors sign off on board expenditures. That's always not necessary all the time, but you do need somebody, obviously your treasurer, looking at bank statements regularly. Verify expenditures and vendors. There should be meeting minutes of who the board hires, and there should be vendor contracts. Background checks. You hope when you have a professional management company for sure that they're not hiring anybody with some type of embezzlement background. And then, of course, you need to keep your records up to date. These are all ways to stop the opportunity, stop the opportunity for somebody to take money from the association. Another way to limit our opportunity, obviously, is to have a handle of what's going on. What are you spending and why? There's 3 types of financial reviews. And this is my celebrity interpretation. The compilation is the least, compilation doesn't require an independent CPA. It doesn't promise any assurance. It's the least assurances that you can get as far as the record's accuracy. The review is the mid-grade, and it requires an independent CPA using basic accounting procedures to give some level of assurance that the money is being managed correctly. And the audit, that's the most in-depth and expensive look at finances, analyzing books, records, meeting minutes, and independently confirming that the information is correct. It is the highest level of assurance. The audit obviously is the most expensive. Audits are usually performed somewhat, obviously not performed every year. We couldn't afford it. It would be a waste of money. Audits are performed particularly when there is evidence of theft or embezzlement. Yeah, look at the audit. Look at that young Leo. This is middle-aged Leo, and this is dying in the forest Leo with the compilation. It's a little extreme, but I think I got my point across. Okay. No commingling funds. There should be dual signatories on an account. Don't like debit or credit cards for associations. We definitely want to have access to view your bank accounts. If there is online ways to do that, that's great, but hopefully you could disable the features for allowing money to be transferred in and out of the accounts, and changing passwords and bill pay. Those things really should be a tight lid on them. And of course, bank statements need to be reconciled. The last thing is signature cards. One of the cases that I had with embezzlement, no one had changed out the signature cards from year to year. And so the last signature card that a certain association had on file was, I think, 4 years old. The board members who were on the signature card no longer had any rights to access that information and had to come down to the bank and prove that they were indeed officers of the corporation, and were entitled to see those things. What was awful about it is that the manager who had been stealing didn't update the records with the Arizona Corporation Commission. So then we're saying, well, we have these meeting minutes of the corporation. These people are truly who they are. So finally, I just pulled I'm an attorney. I represent them. Here's my agreement that I represent them. Bank, we have to release these. And it took some time to get the statements until finally, I just asked the police for help. I said, hey, you're going to subpoena these financial records as a part of your criminal case. Do you mind giving us access to them? And they said, sure. But they eliminated a lot of pain that we were getting roadblocks to being able to get into the bank statements for the association. So please keep up your signature cards. Also, please keep up, make sure that your the officers and the other directors are updated with your Arizona Corporation Commission. Reserve studies. So another thing about being financially healthy are reserve studies. Unlike other jurisdictions, Arizona doesn't have any requirements on having reserve studies, just that you disclose them for ones that you've done in the last 5 years when you sell properties in the association. We're still the Wild West. It's still really a good idea to have the reserve study. Everyone knows reserve studies will show you your roadmap for what you should be saving over time to replace certain components, whether those components are recreational facilities, whether it's roads. Reserve studies will show the board and guide the board into adopting a budget. Understand your budgets are super important, obviously, in the sense that condominiums in particular, budgets are subject to ratification of the members unless it's in your CC&Rs, by the way, that the board itself has the express authority to adopt a budget. Reserve studies will help you make the budget, and it's part of your best practices to have a reserve study. Let's see. So in the event that money is missing, please notify your insurance. Understand that some policies will require criminal prosecution in order to get your money back that someone stole. And it's important that you don't sleep on your rights and that you timely give the insurance heads up about the claim. Some policies, unfortunately, like I said, require prosecution. Some require a conviction. Some will pay back the money, but won't pay for the audit for you to prove how much money was stolen from you. Contact the police, and of course, you might have to hire experts. Go talk to your attorney, accountant, and of course, transparency. I've seen these embezzlement cases backfire. Members are understandably angry, And oftentimes if the members will be mad at the board. The members will blame the board for being asleep at the wheel, for not reviewing financial statements, for not vetting the manager, by not getting references to the manager, missing some of these red flags that we talked about today. And so I've seen where the members have said, you guys did this in secret, you covered this up. And the board members are unpaid volunteers, right? And they have just walked away. I have some boards just resign and say, you know what, have the attorney handle it. Please hold on. Don't let the attorney just handle everything. In that case, in that association where the board just resigned, even though they're not the ones who stole, it ended up costing the association thousands of dollars, because the attorney has I have an ethical duty. Attorneys have an ethical duty to see it through, what a reasonable attorney would do, and it ended up costing the association even more money, rather than just staying the course and letting the police figure things out. Okay, so I was talking about fidelity coverage. That's going to be bought with your general liability policy. This is what's going to help cover you in theft and embezzlement cases. It's important to set the limits of that policy. Have a conversation with your broker on a proportion of annual assessments, 2-3 months worth, a year, depending on what your liabilities are. You should cover all your agents, employees, managers, officers, and directors. And then, of course, I told you about this caveat of fraud prosecution, that the policy may require prosecution for coverage. I hope not, but in a lot of instances, it is required. So what's covered under fidelity insurance? Your financial losses, costs relating to notifying the members, sometimes lawsuits from data security breach, errors and omissions, we talk about that, business interruption, data restoration, and privacy liability. I see more coverage when it relates obviously to the financial losses than I have covering these other parts. Understand retroactive dates, right? So your policy and when the theft actually occurred is where it's going to apply. Let's see. I think I had a note on this to talk about it. Yeah, the problem is most thefts are discovered until months or years later. Anything before a retroactive date in your policy is not going to be covered. That's why I said it's really important to notify your carrier the minute that you suspect that there's a claim, there's fraud. Here's a nice little quote from one of the Wolf of Wall Street. This is a Leonardo DiCaprio movie. If you've not seen it, it is foul. It is long and it has lots of dirty language and dirty things in it, but it totally embodies greed. So let me tell you something. There's no nobility in poverty. I've been a poor man. I've been a rich man, and I choose a rich man every time. I choose rich every time. So that's my Leonardo quote. A couple of things that I want to touch on. Budgets in particular. So I've had a lot of questions. We're getting into budget season. Budgets are different for associations than how you would run your household. So how you run your household, right? I make X amount of dollars at my job. VF pays me X amount of dollars, and I need to live within my means. So I set my expenses under what I make. That is not how association operates. It's opposite. It's counterintuitive, but the way association operates is that we have so many expenses that we have to meet. We're required to do these maintenance obligations, and it's going to cost us X amount of dollars. Therefore, we need to set our assessments at the pace of funding our reserve and paying for these maintenance obligations. So it's opposite. If you cannot raise enough revenue to meet all of your obligations, you're going to end up deferring maintenance, and that's not the way to do it. You need to change your documents on your cap for assessments or ask for a special assessment. You keep on kicking the can down the road, you're going to be in trouble. And these are the times when you're vulnerable like that, where criminals or other people who are desperate for money will take advantage of associations. So that's where my advice to you is in budgets as far as setting them. We do a whole class on budgets. We talk about the different accounting methods, which I briefly talked about in an earlier slide. about reviews, audits, and compilations. These are definitely, this financial tool is super important from the embezzlement stance, but it's more important, obviously, in the stance of running your association, keeping it financially healthy, and obviously your purpose to increase property values. Let's see if I have any other tidbits for you. Let me go back to this hypothetical here. Okay, so let's break down this hypothetical. We have a manager with a portfolio, starts his own management company. There's something to be said too about managers and management companies in the industry, ones that are part of our trade groups. The board can start by vetting and using managers and management companies that subscribe to AACM, the Arizona Association of Community Managers, or CAI, that is a national organization. And then our second here, the president finds out that the landscapers haven't been paid. So what happens? I think Jack probably needs to pick up the phone. He needs to call the landscaper and say, hey, when's the last time that you received a check? How much are we supposed to be paying you? Part of assessing your liability and what you'll be getting to your attorney if you're in this situation will be, you need the landscaping contract, and you need to see how much you need to pay the landscapers to make them even, so you don't get into more litigation for not paying your vendors. The financial reports on the Excel spreadsheets, obviously not a good thing. You want to use an association that has the software. You should be asking questions about the format of your financial statements, how to read them. Sometimes financial statements are not the easiest to read, especially if you don't have background and what your liabilities and what your assets are. Like I said, we could do classes alone on that topic. Okay, so Frank talks about that there isn't money because of deferred maintenance. Again, what should have you been saving for? What should have you been doing? A reserve study would help with that issue. Records requests. Obviously, we have a duty to provide records to our owners within 10 days after they request, assuming that request is reasonable and not for a commercial purpose. This large number of delinquencies, where's the board been asking about what are we doing for collections? Why are these people getting behind? Have we sent them letters? Those are questions that you should be asking. There shouldn't be a confrontation when you're asking questions about finances. Obviously, when you're using a professional, and here it says Franks becomes defensive, and then he says, I'm saving you money. The board needs to be careful about their vendors. Obviously, you should be hiring vendors with proper licensing, with proper insurance. You could see the certificate of insurance. You shouldn't be using vendors that you don't know, and you should be using licensed bonded contractors, particularly because that's a liability to the association. I'm sure you all have heard of the saying, penny wise, pound foolish. And so that goes for using family members to do things that are related to your directors too, not just from your manager. And then of course your bank statements, not being able to see them, updating your signature card. Here it is where they don't have access to the bank statements and the manager goes out of town. Many of these associations will have professional management that have portals, that have access to all the financial information, not just for the directors, but also to the homeowners, where the homeowners can get on and see at any time whatever financial reports, whatever meeting minutes are. So if you're not a board member today and you're just you're a member, you still have the power to see these things. You're still entitled to these documents. And some manager is going to hate me today because they're going to get all these requests for financial records after a bunch of people get out of this seminar. And then of course, I don't know, there's definitely a line between your relationships with your managers. Some of my managers I consider my friends, obviously. I would hope that I would know if they had some type of alcoholism or gambling addiction that would make them steal, but you never know. You really don't know what's going behind closed doors. So finally, I will say I'll give props to the police in these these situations. Some jurisdictions have been certainly more helpful than others. Please don't put yourself in that position where you would need the help of the police. And of course, you have accountants, you have your attorney, even your own management company. I know that some managers who have been part of management companies that have stolen, and it's totally given disdain for the board for the management company. That is not necessarily indicative of the whole management company. Okay. There are certainly bad apples in bunches all the time. The bigger management companies, the ones who've been around a lot longer, have procedures, software in place to help stop these things. They're very segregated. And I don't see this. I see this more on the mom and pop, the smaller management companies. That's not to say that smaller management companies aren't good. Some of the smaller management companies have amazing managers where there's not turnover, and they're well-oiled machines. But those are just some things to look out for. Are there any questions? I haven't seen much questions in the chat. I'm looking through see if I forgot anything in my outline for you. Yeah, no, I already mentioned this, that there's no Arizona statute requires HOAs to have reserve studies, whereas many states says there has to be at least a physical inspection every 5 years. Maybe that's a good thing for Arizona, maybe it's not. I feel like as we have managers that are very educated and are credited and go through vigorous training with our trade groups that know what to do. So I think that that's important, and these educational, obviously there's some of you getting credit here today is important. I don't think there's anything else that I have to add. I think I've
Question.
Is there a question?
Yeah, what liability do board presidents have if the community manager stole money?
Well, okay, so my general spiel to directors and to managers is, what's the scope of your authority, right? So intentional towards, let's say Mark goes and punches Janet in the face, is not going to be something that the corporation is going to cover, right? It's outside the scope of his authority to go punch Janet in the face. Intentional torts are not something that the corporation covers. At the same time, to Mark's question, what liability do board presidents have that community manager stole money? Unless you are conspiring to help them steal money, there's still obviously accountability from perception from your members, but legal liability, I haven't seen it. If you did things in the best interest of your ability, most of the time there's at least going to be indemnification. There could be liability in the sense of, well, how grossly negligent, did you go out with a manager and you go blow $100,000 at Harrah's without even asking? Maybe there might be liability there, but I just haven't seen it in that context. Usually liability goes to the intentional torts. But what I have seen is that board presidents have been the scapegoat for a manager stealing, and had to answer some pretty hard questions at board meetings of, why didn't you look at the financial statements? Why didn't you vet her or him? Why'd you vet the manager more? And so they end up often getting blamed and resigning in many cases. And I don't blame them. I think it's important for board presidents to educate themselves, go to stuff like this so that doesn't happen. But is there a risk of personal liability? Sure there is. If you conspire to help them steal, there's going to be liability. If you did things to your best interests, and I don't see where there would be liability, and most likely there would be indemnification for you, that you'd end up getting some cost of defense paid under the carrier, under your fidelity policy. Have any other questions here? Any hands raised? It's hard to tell. Oh, there's another one. What would you recommend the board request from a treasurer who uses Excel? Go look at the bank statements. Go reconcile those things. Do they jive? Bank statements are going to be a tell-all. I'm not saying, so please don't go out of this and be like, Christina told me that if they're using Excel, they're embezzling. That's not necessarily the case, especially if you're self-managed. You might want to invest in some other software, though, to help you keep track of expenditures. But I would recommend for a treasurer, they need to provide all the bank statements, and you all need to look at their math. Have somebody check the math. That's why there has to be oversight to eliminate opportunity, right? And hopefully all the treasurers in this seminar today don't go and resign because they get scared. Don't do that. We definitely need you. It takes a whole team here. It takes a village. Where did I put? We talked about segregation. I think that's in my outline. Go get your bank statements. Take a look at the cards. See if you can see the bank statements online. Those are the type of questions I would be asking for your treasurer. Copies of checks. Take a look at the contracts, and to double check that things are being paid the way they should be paid. I know that in cases where managers were cutting checks to friends or themselves, they were cutting checks that were higher than the amount of the things that they were purchasing. So they would go cash a check, for instance, for a generator, and the generator would be a couple $1,000s, but they would write a check to themselves for $3,000. I think I've also seen it in the context of paying bills. Oh, I moved money over to this account to pay the water. Well, did we have a leak? Why are we paying $200 or $300 more? In the case of the Glendale couple, what was happening is the manager was cutting checks to his husband. I did say that correctly, to his husband for tree trimming, and the tree trimming never got done. So you want to take a look at the canceled checks. Who are those getting written out to? You want to take a look at the contracts of what vendors have a list of those. And you want to take a look at, of course, I said the bank statements earlier. Any other questions coming up? You guys have some good questions. I think we're right on 10 minutes before, so you guys can catch some lunch if you haven't done already. You haven't been eating through the seminar. If you think of any other questions that we didn't cover, I think this is pretty basic. I pointed out just 3 or 4 instances of actual embezzlement. We've done a few seminars throughout the industry. Some have been by CPAs. Right now, with a lot of work from home, obviously we're doing less from work from home now, but we've seen uptick in uptick in these cases of embezzlement, unfortunately, with the pandemic, with work from home. So it's important for you to be vigilant, and it's important to know your neighbors and know people on the board and know your manager. So. And your attorneys too. We certainly like to help you, but these are definitely not my favorite cases. They are long and drawn out, and understand that sometimes the insurance doesn't pay out until a prosecution. In the case of Method Real Estate, that prosecution took more than a year to get there, and she spent 3 years in jail, and she'll be paying restitution to the insurance company for a long time. So it sometimes can take a long time to make these things right. Unfortunately, so it'd be better for them not to happen. Okay, well, if you have anything, let Terry and I know. You can email us, christina.morgan@vf-law.com.